Hello and welcome to another episode of the Paperstac podcast. I am Brett Berkey and this is Rick Allen.
That's me.
We are here today with another knowledge bomb out of his head. And so what we'll be talking about today is something everyone's heard of, something that nobody ever wants to go through, on either end probably, but it's called foreclosure. So we had a question posed in one of our videos. They were talking about they're going to be going through foreclosure and it's going to be in the next 2 months, and they started asking specific questions. I went over
in the comments. Somebody left a comment on the video.
A comment on it, yeah. So what did I say?
You said in our videos.
Oh, in a comment in our videos. And I was sitting there and I was about to type something. I was like, I'm going to let Rick talk. That'd be a much better solution than me typing something because I might not have been right. So that's why I invited Rick to kind of give me the ABCs of foreclosure and kind of the, just the gist. You just to kind of like know all the words that go with it, the different types. What do you do? How do you do it? So if you're looking on Paperstac and you see it as foreclosure, you're wondering, well, was there a step-by-step process I should take through this? And guess what? There is, and it's coming out of him.
So, okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about, I'm going to answer the questions that this person had. And I think, if I remember correctly, they were asking, do I have to let this go through foreclosure? Do I have to let it go to auction? Or can I try to buy it before it gets to auction or do something like that? But what I'm going to talk about before I get to that is I'm going to talk about the due diligence that goes into it, the process that goes into analyzing a note that's in foreclosure, and what should I do to make sure I'm buying a good note.
Right.
Okay, so the first thing I want to do, just like anything, is I want to gather as much information as possible. I'm going to ask the seller questions. Obviously, I'm the buyer. I'm asking the seller questions. I want the seller to provide as much information as possible. I want them to tell me stuff like, how far along are you in the foreclosure? I'm going to ask them, is the borrower represented by an attorney? Are they fighting the foreclosure? Do you know why they're in foreclosure? Is the buyer alive?
What's the technical word for that when they have a lawyer on their side? Contesting?
Yeah, if they're contesting the foreclosure. So is it a contested foreclosure? Because that's going to determine, how hard of a fight is it going to be? Is the borrower really putting up a fight, or are they non-existent? Or is the house vacant and they left and they don't want to have anything to do with it?
Or in the off chance maybe they passed away.
They may have passed away. I know the first one I purchased, the borrower had 5 foreclosures going on at that time, and they didn't want a sixth. So they said, "Here, I'll sign the house over to you." So it was good. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to ask the seller for all the information I can get, and then I'm going to do the next step. You do this on every time you buy a note, but I'm going to ask for the payment history and I'm going to ask for the servicing notes.
What are you looking for there?
I'm trying to figure out, hey, how far behind are they? And then I'm trying to look at it and say, okay, when did they stop paying? Let's look at the servicing notes around the time that they stopped paying and leading up to when they stopped paying, and find out, is there anything in the notes that would show, A, the reason they stopped paying, and B, is there anything after they stopped paying in the servicing notes that shows that they want to modify their loan, or they want to sign their house over, or they want to keep the house. Mm. So those are all important things. Basically what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to take all the information I can from the servicing notes, payment history, compare it to what the seller told me, and then I get a firm understanding of what's actually going on with this. Okay. Once that's all done, I'm going to start looking at court records. So I'm going to look at the court records of the actual case, and it's pretty accessible in the state of Florida to where you can see, go to the clerk of the court website, pull up the civil cases or the foreclosure cases, plug in the defendant's name, and you can see really clearly what's going on in the case. I can see how far along it's been going, or how far along it is. I can read different documents within there, at least in the state of Florida you can. Other states you need to either pay to play to get in, or you have to have an attorney do it. But for the most part, you can at least get an idea of how far along it is from looking at, A, when it was filed, and B, what stuff has been accomplished in the case.
So some states you have to have an attorney's license?
Yeah, some state. Well, you can see like high level stuff, but if you want to get any of the details, you have to have an attorney looking at it.
Wow. Okay.
So once I do that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to check to see, hey, has this borrower filed bankruptcy? Is it in bankruptcy right now? And I'm going to do that by looking on pacer.gov, pacer.gov, and it's a website where you can plug in somebody's name and see if they've ever filed a bankruptcy? Do they have a current bankruptcy? Do they have past bankruptcies? I'm looking, either is it going to be Chapter 7? Is it going to be a Chapter 13?
Okay, 3 questions right there. First, why does that matter about bankruptcy? What does it do to a foreclosure? And why would they, I guess they don't really care because their credit's already going to be pretty smashed. But
Yeah.
that's like, you got a foreclosure and a bankruptcy. That's pretty bad. That's going to take at least 7 years to get your, but that's the first question. And then what's the difference between a 7 and 11? 7 and a 13?
7 and 13.
And then lastly, if the foreclosure gets dropped, does that's be a third question. Will that still stay on their record? And then could they get out of bankruptcy and then just get off skate free?
Okay.
Too many questions.
There's a lot of questions. Let's see. What was your first question?
I forgot.
The first question.
7 and 13. It was
7.
No. Why would they do that? Why would
they? So somebody might file why would they file bankruptcy?
Yeah.
There's any number of reasons to file bankruptcy, and it kind of will go hand in hand with either the 7 or the 13. So on a Chapter 7, you've got a bunch of debt, and you're trying to look, I'm throwing my hands up, I'm being absolved of the debt. You're going to sell off my assets to pay off the debt. And then whatever's not, I'm sorry, I'm done with it. Chapter 13 is a restructuring of your debt. So you may owe X amount of dollars to, you may be behind on your mortgage payment, $30,000, and you want to keep your house. So you got to figure out a payment plan that will allow you to pay your mortgage and pay back the amount that you are behind. That's called a payment plan. So if somebody has so much debt that they're like, look, I just can't deal with this, I'm going to start over, Chapter 7. If they're like, look, yes, I'm behind, maybe it was triggered by somebody got sick, loss of job, but I'm back on my feet now. I can make my payments. I want to keep my house. They're going to lean towards Chapter 13.
Right. Okay, cool. I get it now. And lastly,
so if they file a bankruptcy, why I'm looking for it at that is because it can, if it's a Chapter 7, it can delay it until you get either the bankruptcy completes or finishes, or you get what's called relief of stay. So if they owe you $200,000 and the house is worth $150,000, you're going to probably file a motion and get what's called relief of stay. So you're allowed to take that asset and pull it outside of the bankruptcy and say, look, this asset's worth less than they actually owe me on it, so you can't sell this to pay off any other debts because I'm going to take this back to cover my debt. However, if they owed you $150 and the house was worth $300, you're probably not going to get relief because they're going to sell that house, take all the equity that's left over, pay you off what you're owed, but then they're going to use it to pay off the rest of the stuff. So it can delay your foreclosure or you getting the house or ultimately stop you from getting the property. If it's a 13, it can delay the process because they have to file a Chapter 13. Once they do that, then they have to give time for all the creditors to respond. Anybody that the defendant owes money to, they have a chance to respond. And then they have to approve a plan. It's just, it can delay the process.
Interesting. And if I'm a note investor, I'm looking at a Chapter 7 because I might want the house back, but there's no guarantee I would get it.
There's not a guarantee, but there's a good chance.
Nothing happened with you?
Well, every time I went through 7, I got the house back.
Oh, wow. Okay. And then Chapter 13, you're looking for cash flow because they're going to have to pay the mortgage and the arrears.
Yeah, they got to pay the arrearage account and the mortgage, so you're going to be able to double dip. And sometimes
that's going to be hard because if they weren't paying the mortgage, it's going to be hard. But they're obligated, right?
That's why a lot of Chapter 13s I see, and a lot of them fall apart.
Really?
Oh yeah. I've been through more that fall apart than more than succeed.
Really?
Yeah. Because you got to pay your mortgage and you got to pay the arrearage account. So if you owed $30,000 and you have 5 years to pay off $30,000.
Wow.
You're paying what, $500 a month?
600.
$600 a month?
Yeah. Wow. That's
yeah,
all.
500.
500.
60 months.
Oh,
5 years.
Oh, I got the numbers backwards.
Yep. It's all right.
It happens.
So that's what I'm using Paperstac for, to check and see, hey, is there any bankruptcies going on? Once I do that, I've checked all these things. I've talked to the seller, gathered the information, looked at the pay history, looked at the servicing notes, looked at the court records. I've looked at Pacer. Now I want to ask the seller, can I talk to the attorney that's doing the foreclosure? Because I'm going to get a sense from them what's going on with the foreclosure. How steep of a hill do we have to climb? What's going on with it? Try to, understand also if the seller doesn't tell you, why are they selling this? Any idea? If there's a problem in the case, am I willing to take on this problem?
I gotcha.
Because essentially that's what you're doing when you're buying an asset in foreclosure. You're buying someone's headache.
Yeah.
Because they can be a headache.
I would imagine. I mean, this is the first time you're actually putting any money in the deal? You're not getting to this part. I mean, Pacer costs nothing.
Pacer's nothing. It's free to sign up and like 10 cents a page. So, you're $6 for the month, $7 depending how much you're on there. But typically, if you're just looking at one foreclosure case or you're searching 3 or 4 different borrowers for bankruptcy, it's nothing.
Okay. And then now, when you talk to the attorney, you're paying by the hour.
Yeah, typically you will, but you're not having an hour conversation. It's like 15 to 30 minutes is plenty.
But they'll still charge you.
Yeah, they're going to charge you. And oftentimes, like if I'm the seller and you want to talk to my attorney, it's like no, I'm not gonna. I'm going to get charged. So if you want to talk to him, I'll give you permission to talk to him, but he's going to have to
bill you.
Interesting. Now, one quick question. Now, you're at the point where you're starting to spend some real money with the attorney.
Mm-hmm.
Do you still do a BPO and an O&E report?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always want to make sure the value and the title's clean.
Right.
Because sometimes foreclosure attorneys will start foreclosure and there's a cloud in the chain of title. I want to see it and make sure I know what's going on. Yes.
So at this point you're like, all right, I got past the pacer, I got past the questions, I got the servicing notes, I got the pay history. Yep. I haven't put a dime in. Have you made your offer?
Oh yeah, you kind of know an indicative offer.
Right.
I'll say okay. Just based on this, if everything looks good in the foreclosure, if it's a little hairy, I'm probably going to be somewhere in the ballpark of this.
And so if you're on Paperstac, there's a negotiation phase.
Yeah, I'll probably make my offer after I've basically looked at or talked to the seller, ran through the servicing notes, because that's easy stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll be able to look at their pricing, definitely on Paperstac, and get an idea of ballpark on if we're going to be close. If they're just egregiously high on price, I'm probably going to go to price before I get to doing all that extra work. But if their price is somewhere in the neighborhood of reality, then I'll go ahead and move forward with that.
At any point, does the time that they haven't been paying factor into this?
Yeah, there's statute of limitations issues. Usually it's got to be filed, once the foreclosure is filed, the statute of limitations doesn't stop. You just have to file it within a certain time. But there's ways around it. You can advance the due date. So, if they're 7 years behind and the statute of limitations is 5 years, you might advance the next due date to 4 years and 10 months. So that way there's
some... What do you do with all that arrearage?
Yeah, throw it out the door. You burn it. You're not getting it.
Wow. Is that worth it sometimes?
Well, if you can't foreclose because you're outside the statute of limitations
so.
And you lose all your money, or I'm gonna not collect, $20,000 or however much it is, yeah, it's worth it. It's something you do to say, okay, this asset is secured, I can go get it.
Okay, cool. All right, so we're at the lawyer. You've already talked to them.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk to the lawyer. I may ask, who's opposing counsel, and have you dealt with this opposing counsel before? Are they difficult? And, I know difficult defense attorneys for foreclosure that I've dealt with in Florida. Mm-hmm. There was a few that we dealt with that were just to the point where they were so difficult and so good at their job and making the prosecution's life hell that I would, if I knew that they were the defense attorney, I wouldn't buy it. I was like, I'm not buying it, or I'd sell it. Or I'd be ready to go, okay, this guy's a dirtbag, I think I can throw him $15,000 and he's going to get out. You know what I mean? The borrower, yeah.
Gotcha.
Because not all borrowers were bad, but sometimes we had them. I was like, you would ask them, why did you stop paying? And they say, because my neighbor stopped paying. I'm like, you didn't have like a life event? Like, no, they stopped paying. So I thought, hey, if they're not going to pay their mortgage, I don't want to be stuck paying mine. And it's like, okay, well, you got to leave now. You got a foreclosure on your record.
Oh my gosh.
I'm sorry.
Do you have a standard list of questions you have for the attorneys? So like this, and this?
No, I talked to, I want to know, how far along are you in the case? How close to judgment do you think we are? What's, do you have a time frame on you saying, look, I think we can have judgment by this date?
How's
Any
the
any problems?
judge split?
Any problems you're seeing with this? How's the judge? Have you had any issues with the judge? You know anything about this judge? Is he particularly strict? Is he pro borrower? Is he pro lender? Stuff like that. What's the case look like? Any flaws that we need to worry about? Just trying to figure out. Hey, and talk to him a little bit. Can he talk to me? Do we flow? Because I have the option, if I buy it, to fire him and bring in my own attorney or bring in somebody I've worked with in the past. Or if the guy or girl knows their stuff, then I'm going to go ahead and stay with them.
Right.
Especially if it's far along in the case. If they've been,
because they know it.
They know it. If they've been on it for a while, there's no sense in rocking the boat, tipping the apple cart. Pick your cliche.
Because that would. You don't want me to go on cliche.
No, I do. I really do. I really want you to just let it loose.
I can't even think about. Yeah. I don't know. But will that delay the process if I change counsel?
Weeks, but a couple weeks. It's not bad. It's pretty easy to get them in there. How quickly can your attorney get caught up? Can they review the court records? Can they review the case file from the current counsel? So it's not long. A little extra cost because your attorney's having to go do double work now that attorney's already done learning the file. They got to relearn it, but you're not paying that. You're actually not paying those fees. It's somebody else already paid the initial cost. Typically, if you do keep an attorney on, it can be cheaper because
You've already done all the work.
Maybe a lot of the work's already been done, but
it's interesting. So have you ever got one and be like, this attorney has not won anything for me ever. I'm firing him right away. Or I don't want the note because
No, I haven't done that where I've had an attorney who I've
just disliked.
Where I put on there and I was like, this attorney has never won anything for me because if they lose one thing for me, I'll never use them again. But if I get on there and I'm like, look, where are we? I'll kind of lay some narrow swim lanes to get timelines down. Where are we on the timelines on this? Hey, what's going on? If they tell me I'm going to have something over to you this afternoon, latest tomorrow morning, and I don't get it till next week, I'm like, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
I've worked with some really, really good attorneys that are really on top of their game, and they beat me to the punch as far as knowing when and where stuff has to be filed. And I mean, that's their job, but oftentimes as a note investor, you do other people's jobs for them until you find the right one that does their job. And so there's some good ones. I've also had some terrible ones that are just flighty and can't keep a timeline and can't get stuff done.
And such a bad trait for a lawyer.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
You're like a mathematician that's not good at math. I mean, you got to keep. That's like the whole thing with being a lawyer, right? Knowing when to do what to say, when.
Yeah. Yes and no. I mean, there's an artist side of the business and then there's a clerical technician side of the business.
Yeah.
And sometimes some people are just, maybe it's not they're not flighty, they're so busy and they don't have adequate help.
I could see that.
But at the end of the day, it's still going to reflect on my case, so that means if I've got somebody over here who's like, look, they've got their shop set up and they're getting stuff done and it's working, I'm going to move my stuff over there.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so then lastly, to kind of answer their question, that was a lot of information on what do you do when you go to buy the loan, the due diligence for it. Now it's time to buy the actual asset. And I've purchased it. What do I do? Well, first of all, like we said, you can do substitution of counsel. Mm-hmm. And so what will have to happen is if you're gonna change your attorney, the current counsel has to do substitution of the plaintiff. So they have to bring you into the case.
Okay.
So they're substituting party plaintiff. So maybe I bought this from Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo's out. XYZ LLC is in. Mm-hmm. That's the new plaintiff on the side. Once that happens, then you file a motion, have your attorney file a motion to substitute counsel. You're bringing in your own attorney and replacing them. You can do that.
Wow.
If it's time, if you've already got judgment when this all happens, you can actually assign the judgment.
Okay.
So you
If I
file.
bought it from you, you sign the judgment to me?
Right, you can do that. You have to file a motion with the courts, but you can have the judgment assigned.
Wow. And so, if that's a question that I find interesting. So if they're on the site and they're going foreclosure through a foreclosure, and they've already got judgment assigned, why are they going to list it on the site? I mean, what's the reasoning for that?
Okay, so maybe they're going to take it to, they want to take it all the way up to the end, and so they're going to hand it to somebody and say, here, you can now take this, go to the auction with it, and maybe get the property back, and you're going to be into it for this much. Or maybe it sells and you make a profit. So if you're somebody who's, look, I like the idea of buying the real estate, I like that, you're going to get a little bit of a discount by taking it and then running it through the auction yourself. Versus if it hits the market, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's going to sell for more. And so that kind of goes to the next question that person has. Does it have to go through the auction? Yeah. Most of the time it has to go through, if the foreclosure's done, judgment's entered, the only way to get that property back through the courts is to have it go through the auction. You run into situations where, look, my judgment's only for 160 and the house is worth 270. Guess what? Somebody is going to bid on that at the auction. And they may bid $1 more than your judgment, in which case they're going to get the property, you'll get paid off your judgment figures.
Can you...
But there's a way around that. There is one way is you can get the borrower to actually sign the property over, to sign a deed in lieu to you. So a deed in lieu of going through the foreclosure. That's why I've paid so much money.
So that's pretty cool. So you're at the judgment. The borrower knows, this is it. This is the last couple steps. I'm
done.
Where's the U-Haul?
I'm either going to file a bankruptcy at that point, so a judgment could be entered, and they can say, I'm declaring bankruptcy. And all they have to do is do a notice of bankruptcy.
And how long does that delay it?
At least 30 days.
But then after, what if nothing's been done? Then can they do it
again? Then you got to go back and get back on the calendar again for the auction.
Jeez. Mm-hmm. That's really kicking the can down the road.
Sucks.
But
it's happened, but it's no fun.
I would imagine, though, money talks. Like, if somebody's, like, they know they're eventually going to lose. You can't...
Eventually, they're done. So,
but if you're like, look, here's $10,000. I'm sorry you lost your house. Take it, go start a new life.
Hey, we'll rip this chapter out of your life.
Oh, yeah, you won't even have a foreclosure on your record. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a big dangling carrot.
Mm-hmm. That's a big one.
Hey,
look, I'm going to give you $10,000.
That's a huge... You already lost, pretty much. It's just, the time's clicking. That little sand is falling out of that hourglass.
Right.
And that, how'd you like that analogy? I guess that's not an analogy. I guess it is. Yeah, I know. So anyhow, and so the deed in lieu, sign your house over, walk away with 10 G's, and no foreclosure, and you can go start over and use this 10 G's to rent someplace, and then when you go to buy a house, there's no record of a foreclosure.
Right. So that's...
And then, so if the house is worth $270 and you're only owed $160, you get the house for...
You're into it for $170 now, and you get a house that there's $100,000. Otherwise, you know...
And maybe you bought the foreclosure for only like $100.
Could be.
That's pretty neat. Okay, now I see the allure of it all.
Yep.
But so even if it went to auction, you still win.
Yeah, you still make money, but...
Not as much as if you had the house.
Like I'll just go back to the one in South Carolina that I bought, the contract for deed that was on the platform. And
this one.
This is a great case example or a case study. I've talked about it in the past. I'll talk to it just again for those that haven't heard about it. I went on there. I looked on Paperstac, and this is probably 3 or 4 years ago. And there was a contract for deed in South Goose Creek, I think, South Carolina, that the debt on it, the principal balance was like 30, the total payoff was like 40, and the house was worth like 180 fixed up. Mm. So I was like, it sat there for 3 or 4 months, and I was like, what's going on? So I reached out to the seller, said, hey, can you tell me about this? Why are you selling it? They're like, well, we just don't want to take this property back, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay. And I went and I said, you have the servicing notes, you have the payment history. I looked at it and I was like, oh my gosh, the borrower said that they would sign the house over. It's vacant. They would sign the house over.
This house was vacant.
The house was vacant. They said, and in the servicing notes, they were like, yes, I will sign this over to you. You can have it. I don't want it. I've got bad memories of this place. I think they went through a divorce or something. I just don't want to be here. You can take the property back. So if I got that, I knew that I was like, okay, I think I bought it for $30,000. I paid almost 100% of the principal balance on it. And I was like, if I have to foreclose, I'm going to make like $10,000 on a $30,000 investment. Not bad, pretty good, right? Mm-hmm. But I said, if I can get this borrower back on board to sign the property over for me, then I can sell this thing for probably 120, maybe 190, somewhere in there, 90 to 120. And actually, that's what we ended up. So I think we sold it for 95, 94, something like that. But I was able to read through the servicing notes that this person wanted to sign the house over. I reached out to him, finally got him on the phone, and they said, yeah, I still want to sign the house over. I'm like, well, why didn't you go through with it before? They go, because they put me in touch with an attorney who was a jerk, and I want to deal with it. And I was like, perfect.
Still makes me laugh every time.
I'll deal with it. You can deal with me. I'm not a jerk. You can deal with my agent. She's not a jerk. I'm firm but fair. Firm but fair. So had I let that go through foreclosure, I would be into it for 30. I probably would have been able to have a judgment of like 45. It would have taken me probably 4 to 6 months, and I would have got back, 10 or 15 grand profit. But I was able to sell it for 95 on a $30,000 investment.
That's pretty sweet.
Mm-hmm. I paid the lady. I think I paid her $1,000. I don't really remember. I paid her something, but she signed it over.
What's that return?
It was a lot. So that's it. That's the foreclosure game. It can yield tidy profits, but it can be a pain. You're buying someone's headaches, and if you're not good at coming up with solutions, that's one thing. I think you said it earlier. Solutions, yeah. It could have been one of the other 7 times we tried to record this one. It could be solutions. If you're good at providing solutions, then you'll be really good at the foreclosure game, because there's always a solution. It's just, you got to figure out, how are we going to get around this? How are we going to get around this? How are we going to get around this?
I would imagine people that are good at foreclosure notes are probably like people that are actually attorneys and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. Before we sold notes, a lot of foreclosure assets, we sold them to attorneys who were just really good at it.
They just knew what to do. And it didn't cost them anything. When it doesn't cost you any money to do the foreclosure, it really helps the bottom line. I could see that.
So that's it for this edition of the Paperstac podcast. We'll have more. Put your questions and comments into the comment section, and we'll get to them faster than 6 months.
Yeah, sorry about that.
We'll knock it out quickly. Stay tuned for more of our new series.
And after this episode, it will be episode 100. So we'll be wearing party hats and those little things. I don't know what you call those things. Kazoo? Is it a kazoo? It rolls out like a...
Yeah, I don't know. Anyways.
And confetti and all kinds of fun.
Yeah, good stuff.
Give me some pizza. So we'll see you on the next one. See ya.
Bye.